hello, welcome one and all. It's time for another Talking Bollocks. Yes, it is. It is time for another wander through all sorts. Well, basically the chaos that is my mind, my opinions, and it's all about me. My apologies. Welcome. I am Howard H. Smith. I am lead singer with UK legendary thrash band Acid Rain. New album came out, The Age of Entitlement, September last year. Check it out. I also do this podcast. I also do stand-up comedy as the character Keith Platt, all of which are available. Talking Bollocks, Acid Rain, Keith Platt, you can find on social media. If you have any questions, if you want to interact, if you want to get involved in any way, that's how you do it. The other way you can do it, become a patron. $5 a month at patreon.com/Howard H. Smith, where you can get, for $5 a month, a shed load of content that is not on here. Behind the scenes Acid Rain stuff, behind the scenes podcast stuff. You get to ask questions of interviewees, etc. So anyway, there you go. That's all the stuff. Welcome. That's the boring intro. Got it done in about a minute, so I'm quite pleased with that. Hello, how are you? What you been up to? Oh, nothing, because you're locked down. Yeah, same here. So, yeah, what has been going on? At the moment, I can tell you that it is absolutely fucking boiling at the moment. It is currently 31 degrees. I am got all the windows and doors shut because I'm doing this lovely podcast for lovely you, and I'm sweating my fucking balls off. I don't mind telling you. There's a mental image to start the podcast with. You can just imagine me wearing nothing but a pair of shorts, sweating like a fucking rapist. That's really probably not the phrase. Sweating like a blind lesbian in a fish shop. Probably not that one either. So I don't know. I'm sweating a lot. Okay, sweating a lot. Anyway, it's enough, isn't it? Move on. So, what has been happening in the world of metal since last we spoke? Well, two things have happened. Firstly, I have a new competitor with Sepultura Quadra for Album of the Year, and I am not going to talk to you about it. And I'm not going to talk to you about it because the album doesn't come out till August. I also have all of the extra tracks they're not releasing as well. So, my apologies about that. But you know what? Once we get nearer, you'll be hearing all about it. And patrons at Patreon will be getting, because they also get they get the podcast early, but they also get I do Movie Bollocks, as you know, because I do the movie podcast, but there's also Radio Bollocks, which is a radio show which I do specifically for patrons. It's behind a paywall, so that's the only way you can get to it, and I will be playing a song from that particular album. Anyway, that was fascinating, wasn't it? But the other album that is out that I is listening to is Lamb of God. That's right. I think I'm getting into it. I really do. Which, appropriately enough for the first album that I'm actually getting into, is called Lamb of God. Yeah, I am actually getting into it. I have to say, I'm impressed. Randy does a great job. It's still not my favourite vocalist ever, but there's something about what he's doing in this album that I like. Simple as that. I've always liked his lyrics. There is There's some rather prophetic lyric on the song Reality Bash, the prophetic lyric of the new abnormal, which obviously is, it's relevant now, isn't it? Big time. But also, there's a song called Resurrection Man, and it starts with the lyric, I was born in a cemetery, which is fine, if that's your thing. And I don't mind telling you, I did it. I just did that, and I totally caught my throat. I'm wiping tears out my eyes, and I was absolutely coughing my nuts up. So that serves me right. But the point being is, the line "I was born in a cemetery" is the opening line of a lyric to a song. Is actually, and I'm wondering if it's a King Diamond Merciful Fate tribute. I can't remember the song, but there is a song that starts that goes, I was born in a cemetery under the sign of the moon. That's That's King Diamond. Okay, so there you go. So I'm just wondering if it's a callback, if it's a tribute in any way. If it is, great. If it isn't, yeah, whatever. But anyway, and like the last track, On the Hook, is superb. New Colossal Hate, that's a classic. What can I say? I'm always open to to new things, and I've given it a whirl, and you know what? I am really enjoying it. I really am. So, I'm sure, and to be fair, I did also watch As the Palaces Burn. I know, it's almost like I'm becoming a fan. A lot, some of my friends have really been surprised, but and I really enjoyed it. That's the documentary about what happened when they went on tour and Randy ended up in jail. And that was a really good documentary. I'm just loving it. Having said that, the very last line of the documentary, right, is one of the band saying, "Well, after going through this, I guess we're stuck together until the end of time unless one of us dies." And that was Chris Adler, ladies and gentlemen. The very last line of the documentary. Who's not in the band anymore? It's Chris, isn't it? So anyway, that's the Lamb of God section out the way. That was quite big, wasn't it? Really enjoying it, and go for it. Give it a whirl. There you go. Can't talk about the other one. New album of the year. I'll tell you what else. What is cool? I'm enjoying the Mordred single EP. I do apologise. There seems to be some sort of disagreement on this at the moment, and I know a few friends are not keen, but I'm kind of liking it. I have to say, after all these years, I wasn't exactly over the moon with the second track being a rap tune, basically. So yeah, that's not ideal. But the EP is called Volition. I'm a big fan. It's only available digitally, I think, but you probably want to check up on that. Available in all the new usual places. I'm looking on Amazon at the moment. It's £3.49. Volition. It is. I like it. 4 tracks. 3 of which I think are great. 1 is quite challenging because Scott's doing some really interesting vocal stuff. But again, I like it. It's not for everyone. So there you go. Moving on. Gary Holt has defended Babymetal. Well, Gary, old friend of mine, is wrong. No, he's not. He's not wrong. What he's saying is basically it's all entertainment, isn't it? It's all... And do you know what? I found myself talking to somebody the other day, and I was saying basically... everything is valid. Every kind of, no matter how shit you might think it is, and you might think it's worthless, like I do Babymetal, frankly. But by the same token, no matter what it is, how shit, whatever it is, if someone then hears it and they like it and it inspires them to become an artist, to whatever, then it's kind of been a good thing, because you may end up being a fan of that person. I mean, it's the old classic that Rush always credited Chuck Billy. Rush always credited Chuck Berry. That's one of their major influences. Not Chuck Billy. I can't imagine Chuck Berry fronting Testament, and I can't imagine Chuck Billy as a genre-defining black musician either. Fucking hell. Sorry about that. So anyway, yeah. Rush always claimed Chuck Berry as an influence, but really not bothered. But they heard Chuck Berry and created Rush, and you go like, wow, Rush is awesome. Like, for instance, Diamond Head, not bothered. Metallica, wow. So I'm kind of going back on everything I've said when I've been battering Babymetal about being absolutely worthless and corporate, and it is a splinter off from their kind of pop idol show. But ultimately, yeah, does it have any artistic value? No, for me. But it could still for somebody else, and that may lead to us, getting some sort of artist at some point. So I do realise I'm kind of going back on what I've said. Don't get me wrong. I hate Babymetal, and I think it's utter fucking drivel. Personally, it has no artistic value. It has no value to me whatsoever. But again, as I said, you never know, do you? Fuck, I'm being too reasonable at the moment. It's ridiculous. But I tell you what, Sepultura fans must be absolutely overjoyed because former Sepultura guitarist Jaro Tormentor Guedes launches old school death metal band The Troops of Doom. Do you know what? He should go on tour with that fucking nobody who used to be in Judas Priest that nobody can fucking remember. Jesus fucking Christ, they're coming out of the woodwork, aren't they? You know, original Judas Priest vocalist that no one cares about or remembers, and original Sepultura guitarist that no one cares about and no one remembers. And he's putting a band together called The Troops of Doom. What a brilliant fucking name. I wonder where he came up with that from. I mean, fucking hell. How long is it since he's been in... I mean, this is what happens in fucking lockdown, isn't it? Hey, people in lockdown, they've been locked down so long, they finally decide that a band they were in when they were fucking teenagers, when they were children, when they were unknown, is suddenly... Their fans are suddenly in need of knowing what I am up to. What is it with these fucking people? I've just realised how I can actually just... I've walked straight into an argument about me bringing Acid Rain back, haven't I? Okay, right, how can I get out of this? Well, okay, here's how I get out of this. I'm a fucking bona fide original member. That guy is just an extra guitarist. Basically, what we're talking about here is, not Max and not Andreas. That's right, it's somebody else. It's the guy who was in the band when they were shit. It's actually the guy that was holding the band back, replaced by Andreas Kisser. Sepultura then go on to get a record deal and record all-time genre classic albums. But not until they got rid of this fucking cunt. And apparently, now, he's going to form a band so you can actually hear why they weren't successful when he was in Sepultura. Lucky you. Fucking hell. Honestly, lockdown's got a lot to answer for. I'll tell you who else has got a lot to answer for. Lennon and McCartney. I've got a bit of a problem with the song, with the Beatles song, Come Together. Okay? Now, it's a lovely message, and it's a lovely vibe. Okay? And especially, at a time like now. But the lyrics, come together right now over me. Bukkake, innit? I mean, I'm just... the Beatles do Bukkake. Come together right now over me. I'm sorry, they're the fucking words. It's got nothing to do with me. Don't be having a go at me, right? That, even if you're a Beatles fan, you've got to admit, that is a bit fucking weird. Having said that, coming from a band who did as many drugs as the Beatles, okay, released more than that one album a year sometimes, and decided to stop touring because they could, they're entitled to do whatever they like, including writing songs about Bukkake. Fine. And I tell you what, Rob Flynn, he's allowed opinions. He's got lots of them. I mean, I guess he's a bit like me. You take him or leave him, love him or hate him. I'd like to think he's a little less self-aware than myself, because it's not until all the members of his band have left that he goes on to social media and do a little video about why they've left, and he knows why they've left, and he hang on too tight and basically says a load of things that he should have actually said to the members that would have stopped them leaving in the first place. But there you go. Okay, so I've completely trashed him, but now I'm going to say Rob Flynn thinks driving gigs are stupid. Do you know what? He's not wrong. Who wants to go to a drive-in gig? What are you going to do? At the end of the song, what do? Flash your fucking... Full beam, horn. Full beam, horn. I enjoyed that greatly. Stick your head out the sunroof. If you've got one, applaud. What do? Do you open the windows and sit on the door, Dukes of Hazzard style, for want of a fucking more relevant and more recent cultural fucking reference? Yeah, I mean, younger listeners, pause podcast, look for Dukes of Hazzard. Sorry, guys. But it's not wrong. I mean, fucking a drive-through gig. And as mentioned in a previous podcast, if you're going to... Sorry, drive-in. I keep messing up. But if you are going to go to a drive-in gig, do you really want your first one to be Doro? Hey? I mean... Look, I'm genuinely not being sexist. I've never, ever rated Doro for some reason. I know she's a legend in some people's eyes, but, hey, not mine, but who gives a fuck about me and my opinions? Well, you lot, clearly, because you're fucking listening. Before I go, and let's crack on into an interview. Motionless in White frontman. My mental health is on a serious decline this year. There you go. And, I checked out some Motionless in White. It's Chris Motionless Cerulli. See what he's done there. In the past March, Motionless in White was forced to postpone its previously announced US tour due to COVID-19. Yeah, what a surprise. Who else hasn't? He tweeted, "My mental health is on a serious decline this year, especially this month. I can't believe how worthless I feel not being able to tour, having so much fun and so much time to sit in my own head and obsess over regrets and self-hatred. I hope anyone else experiencing similar feelings are doing okay." Now, I'm not going to ridicule the guy, because you don't ridicule people with mental health issues, and certainly not when they are, being so honest about it. But what I will say, I was warned a long time ago as a comedian. Do not wrap up your self-esteem in your act. It's especially relevant if you're a stand-up comedian, because you're on your own. And if you wrap up your self-esteem in your act, as I was told, if you go on and you die or it doesn't go very well, you come off and you carry it with you. They hated me. Yeah. Whereas no, they hated your act, not you. They hated the persona that you project on stage. That is different. That is somebody else. What you can't do is use comedy or performing as a source of crutch to deal with any mental issues you have. The point I'm making is, what Chris Cerulli has done is clearly, like he said, I can't believe how worthless I feel not being able to tour. Exactly. He hasn't dealt with the underlying issue of his self-esteem issues, his depression. What he's done is use the band as a fix-it device. He's used the band as medication. Well, that is a terrible, terrible idea. A, it's not a good idea for you. Just obviously out the gate. Also, the other four guys in the band don't need the kind of weight that is having to carry your mental well-being as part of the band. That's a bit unfair. What you need to do is, and you know, I'm not, you know, I'm like I said, I'm not having a go at the guy. I'm really not. But ultimately, you can't use a band, a comedy, whatever it is. If you're a performer, you cannot use that as a way of making you feel better about yourself. You can use it as a way of having fun and going, awesome, this is great, I'm loving it. That's wonderful, it's something to be enjoyed. But it is not a fucking medication. It is not something that you should be using to cover up the cracks in your life. And clearly this dude needs to actually address the issues instead of covering them up by feeling better about himself by being in a band. So there you go. I mean, initially I didn't know where that was going. I'm quite pleased because I could have sounded like a massive cunt there and had a real go at him. Well, I could have, but I would have been a massive cunt. So yeah, anyway, look, I guess occasionally I mention mental health here, as you know, and I just wanted to do it again. So let's get out of the stories and let's get on with a fucking interview, shall we? So now it is over for the second week in a row, second podcast in a row for a two-part interview. Excuse me. So yeah, two-part interview. Yeah, I do leave all that shit in if it's your first listen. They were separated by I think about 3 weeks, and you're going to hear. So there's a 3-week gap. We have Derek and I have met before. We met in Glasgow at Lord of the Lands when when Dark Angel headlined, and that was the first time we met Derek, and he was very cool. We had a really good chat, and He's a fun guy, full of personality, and this is a couple of chats split by, like I said, probably about 3 weeks. And this is what we had to talk about just the other week.
Hello.
Hello there.
Hey, Howard. How you doing, man?
I'm all right, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I appreciate you moving up the time here. It's a beautiful day here, and my kids want to do something.
Oh man, I very much feel like the facilitator now. And yeah, well, when you've been trapped inside as long as we all have, I mean, it's been lovely weather over here for the last sort of fortnight, and basically people are just going, right, we're going to the park, and that's it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. I got an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they're full of energy, and it's hard to keep them inside all the time. And now it's beautiful weather. The restrictions are getting lifted a little bit, and the parks are opening up, and they know, and they're like, "Let's go! Come on, let's go!" Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Oh mate, no worries, man, no worries. So, how are things in your world then? Because I saw you back in 2018 playing a killer show, by the way, up in Glasgow. I really felt. Do you know what? I felt like it was one of those shows where it's like after your set, I was like, right, okay, so it's like we've gone up a level. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I appreciate that, and that show for us. I mean, first of all, the venue is great. Love Scotland. Yeah. I'm a big fan of their whiskey. So, as you probably saw later on that night, I had a little bit too much. But
I think I do remember. But to be fair, sir, I think I was in. In fact, were you in the dressing room right at the very end of the show? When
oh yeah
because Gons was walking around forcing everybody to drink Crown Royal, and he just like hand you the bottle and go drink, and you had to have a drink. In fact, that was probably the most time we spent together the whole night was actually in that dressing room afterwards, because I think we were we were getting very merrily drunk.
Yeah, well, I was beyond merrily. After a show, I'll have a drink or 2 or 3 or 4, and I'll feel good. But sometimes the stars align, and whatever I ate that day either, is left in my stomach or not. And sometimes I just get to a point where I'm a mess. And that's happened maybe 3 times and over the past, 4 years or whatever. And that was one of them. And that was a legendary night, Yeah. I was such a mess, man, and I apologize to all the, to the Dark Angel guys. They were like, "That's cool, man. We know you. It's fine." And but yeah, that night I was I was quite to the sight, I guess, if you want to say.
Oh, mate. Well, yeah. I mean, I wasn't driving, so I wasn't exactly sober myself. But yeah, no, it was good times, man. Good times. And so, what have you guys been doing since? Because are there any plans to put anything together?
Well, yeah, there is. I mean, we've got material. We've got just about enough material for a new album. And that was our plan. I mean, we've kind of come into this very slow and very methodical, because this isn't our full-time gig. It's something that we really are very lucky that we're able to do 30 years later and be more successful now than we were back then, which is crazy. It doesn't make any sense, and we don't question it. We don't try to figure it out. We're just like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Because exactly. And we wrote ourselves off for dead. Many years ago. So, we all have jobs, wives, families, and other things. So, doing this, playing these shows basically on the weekends, or a couple of shows in a row, something like that. It's great, but it is, it is, I guess you want to say, an interruption to the rest of our lives. So we've been doing things slow, just because we just don't have the time to really dedicate to everything. But over the past, 3-4 years since we've, decided to come back, we've written a good amount of material, and the hope is that it can come out. when we first started, many record labels were like, all right, come on, let's go, give us new material. I mean, the big ones, all of the big labels, and that was great. So that gave us a lot of hope and a lot of motivation to write something good, and that's what we're trying to do. And that's another reason why we're kind of taking our time, because I've been part of, Demolition Hammer has 3 albums out. The first 2 were James, Steve, Vinny, and myself, and we wrote aggressive thrash metal music. The next album that came out, Vinny and James had left the band, and Steve and I were like, well, let's write a Demolition Hammer album. And without all 4 of us in it, it didn't sound the same. So we wanted to change the name of the band and do something completely different and call it something completely different. But the record company wasn't going for it. So we were like, well, we already got the material. Let's put it out and cross our fingers and see what happens. And it was a disaster. People who were fans of that aggressive music, those first 2 albums just panned it. And oddly enough, people that had never heard of us before then heard that liked it. So there's a little bit of that still going on. But so being on that side of it, Steve and I can attest. We don't want to put out something that's not, true Demolition Hammer. Those first 2 albums, we want to put out something that's like that, that's good like that, that is true and, pays homage to those, to those first albums. So that's what we're trying to do, and we're taking our time and making sure that what we put out is going to be good.
So all these,
to our standards anyway.
All these years later, you're planning on putting out a follow-up to your second album.
Yeah.
Hey, dude, end of last year, we released our first album for 29 years. So,
oh man,
I'm not giving you
awesome.
no flack from me. I'll send you a link to it. Do you stream or do you download?
I do either or. So I will,
okay.
Or I'll find it, man. That's not a problem.
Oh no, don't you worry. I'm not going to leave you to your own devices. I am going to shove it right down your throat and make sure you've got it.
I definitely want to hear it.
Oh, cool, man. Well, look, it is an awesome feeling when you get around to it. And funnily enough, a lot of what you were saying, I really identified with. The coming back and finding out that you're bigger than you went away. How did that happen? And the second chance at something that you thought had gone. I mean, I know it kind of, when we first came back, it surprised me that I was finding people who got into the band after we'd broken up.
Yeah.
And years later, do you know what I mean? In like the mid-90s or the 2000s. And I'm thinking, well, that's, I think it's because when the band finished for me, in my mind, that's it. That's the end of the band. The band is no more. The end.
Right.
But of course, your music's still out there, and people go on and discover it. Do you know what I mean? But you're completely removed from that world, and then coming back to it to see, bumping into people who didn't get a chance to see the band first time round and stuff like that. That always amazes me.
Yeah, it does, man. And to add to that, it's amazing to see people who are, in their 20s and they weren't even alive when, our last albums came out. And they're like, oh, man, you guys, have gotten me through some periods in our lives. And I'm like, what do you mean, like 4 years ago? It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure, you go through the same thing, man.
Yeah. And I don't know about you as well, but I when I get out on stage and start playing that music, I feel exactly the same way as I did back in the day.
Yeah, except I feel a little bit slower. But
yeah, well, I know there might be the odd a few less high kicks from myself these days. But
right.
Actually, I remember you tear-assing around on stage like a badass in Glasgow. You were all over the shop.
We try. I mean, that was one of our things that we were very proud of back in the early days. So in the early days, nobody knew who we are. Compared to now, it's not like it's not like a lot of people know who we are now. But then, we were just 10% of what we are now. And, we would play every show, no matter whether there was 4 people there or 400 people there. And, at these tiny clubs, we would go nuts. And we just said to ourselves, we're going to have fun, but B, we're going to make those people who do come to see us at least say, well, they kind of suck, but they were crazy on stage, So that's kind of what we were trying to accomplish. And so now coming back and playing shows live now, we don't want to lose that because we were very proud of that. That was something we were really proud of back in the day. But now we're much older, so it's harder, but we persevere through it.
Yeah, and I've always said, I've always believed the key, if there is just one, but the key to live performance is movement.
Yeah.
It's just it's really not that difficult, because basically, I mean, I've done stand up for 25 years in between stints in the band as well, and
that's awesome, dude. Can I find some of your stuff online?
Yeah, there's I do a character, so I'll send you a link to that, because it's but I do a character called Keith Platt's Professional Yorkshireman, and Chris Rock mentioned it in stand up, and I thought, I didn't make the connection.
Oh, wow.
I didn't make the connection until I saw a piece he was making, and when I was back in the band, and it was just basically as a stand up, I always make sure there's a lot of movement, because you move backwards and forwards, and it means that audiences can't take their eyes off you. If you're just stood there telling jokes at a mic stand, people can turn around, talk to their friend about something, turn back in the safe knowledge you'll be there where they left you. But if you are constantly moving, they never turn away to talk to somebody. So you keep them engaged, you keep their concentration, and you keep their focus. And it's more, that is a real key in stand-up, because, you're not playing tunes. You need people to be focused on, concentrate on what you're doing and being quiet. But when you're in a band, I still think it's the same philosophy. If you're an audience member and you're just like, it's a blur of movement on stage, you're just transfixed, because you don't know where to look. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that is what I personally feel just really keeps a live audience, engaged. And you guys were all over the place in a good way.
Thanks. Yeah, we noticed the same thing too. I mean, I've seen so many bands that I think are really, really good and fantastic. I love their music, but when I see them live, they just kind of sit there, and they stare at their instrument, and they sound amazing. I mean, you can attest to this. When you're playing live and moving around like a nut, you can make a lot more mistakes. And, so I get the point of sitting there and not moving, but I don't know, man, I can't do it. I have to move just in general, but if I'm in an audience and if I want to hear it sound flawless and perfect, I'll sit home and listen to the album. If I go to a show, I'm there because I want my ears to be stimulated, but I want my eyes to be stimulated. I want to see these guys, or whatever band I'm watching, just going crazy or doing something rather than just, feet nailed to the floor.
Well, that's it. And also, it's a gig. This is the live version of this song. You've got the studio version, you've got the album version. You don't want to hear that version again. You're not here for that. Every night is a unique experience, and each song is slightly different, and, you start developing them and stuff like that. And this is what does my head in about, bands up in that top 5% these days, where so many using Pro Tools, and I just don't get it.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I do, and sometimes I do. Well, actually, most of the times, 99% of the times, I don't. But I see, there's a lot of debate about like Kiss and how they're using backing vocals and backing tracks and stuff like that. I was a Kiss fan since I was 7 years old. And so I know a lot of the material, and they're, legends in this field, and so I kind of going to cut them slack. I mean, they're almost in their 70s, man. They can't hit those notes. They can't play, their instrument of their vocal instruments just can't do it anymore. So, but they still want to go out there and they still want to play. So you have the choice of, well, I could go see Kiss and have them sound like crap because they literally can't do it, or I can go see them and it's still them and it's still trying, for them to do what they can do, and they're using technology to get them there. But so I'll cut them slack. But other bands that don't need it, it seems that they probably would have overreached in the studio, done too much, Pro Tools and just too much stuff, and then they can't replicate it live, and now they look really bad live because they can't sound like the album, and that's just a mistake. If you need all that stuff to make your music, sound good, then maybe you should
you should look
probably not play live.
yeah. Well, the thing is, I think there's maybe that school of thought, but personally, I think there's more a school of thought. Whereas you're getting the Pro Tooled version of a gig because management basically want to erase mistakes from the band's performance live. So they don't even have to be that technical a band. I'm just thinking of one band that I know in particular who are fucking huge, and if their Pro Tools go down, there won't be a gig. And and it's just it's sad to see, but it's funny you were saying about Kiss there. Got to admit, not a fan, but let's put that aside for 1 minute. When you were telling the story there of they can't do it anymore, but they want to, and blah, and I was thinking, do you know what? That story, it sounded like a boxer who's thinking of coming, who really wants to carry on doing it,
right?
And it's like, no, do you know what? There should be somebody in Kiss's corner just going, guys, you've had your time, okay? You need to retire. No, I've got one more in me. You haven't.
Well, I don't know, man. I listen. That's how they make their living. That's how they do what they do. And back to what you said about seeing a band sit there and stand. Kiss isn't just about the music. I mean, I like the music because that's what I kind of grew up on. But to me, if they just put out the music all by itself without the allure of the whole stage show and stuff like that, to me it would be a different band and it might not be as appealing. So when you go see Kiss live, I think the music is part of the show. It's not the whole show. So I don't mind that they do that. It's more like a Broadway play. And, they don't have a full orchestra if you go to a Broadway play and it's all on tape.
Well,
all right, then you're there for the whole show. So that's how I view that.
Fair enough. Yeah. So that's
but if you get a band that's, like I said, that's, they're just out there trying to play music. They're not trying to be a whole, encompassing entertainment thing. They're just a band, and they need that support, and they need that prop. Then, that's just shame on them, man, because you shouldn't be like that.
Well, funnily enough, when you were talking about Kiss there and about, the music being part of the show and all the rest of it, I was thinking, do you know what? You could have swapped out the word Kiss for Ghost. It's very, very similar.
I'm not a fan of that band.
No, neither am I. Yeah. Good. We agree. I'm not saying that they're similar to Kiss at all, but they're just marketed as The Exorcist and sound like Scooby-Doo.
I'm going to steal that from you, man.
Yeah. No worries.
Who was I talking to somebody about that the other day, talking about Ghosts, and I said the same, almost the same thing. I'm like, I guess it's great to watch them theatrically, but I don't know, the music doesn't do it for me. And that's just me. I'm sure, obviously they're successful and obviously, they have an appeal. But, I like what I like and I don't like what I don't like. And they're one of the bands that I don't like. For no other reason than I just don't like the music. Now, visually, I think it's kind of cool. I mean, I've seen pictures of the masks with no faces, and I'm like, that's kind of a cool idea, but, it's just not my cup of tea, I guess.
Well, I got suckered in by the visuals before I heard the music. So I was expecting, like, oh my God, fucking hell, it's like merciful fate for the new generation. This is going to be great. And then I heard the music and I was just like, this is like Barclay James Harvest or something. What the fuck is going on here?
It's a bit weird for me, And I'm kind of almost the same way. I never really heard of them until I heard other people talking about them. And, I've got some friends that are, really into the music business. And you got to be careful when you hear people in the music business talking about bands because they're talking about potential of earnings and sales and stuff, and not necessarily whether the band is good or not. So they were thinking, oh, this band is great and everybody loves them and they're going to be huge. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess that means they must be good. And I listened to them and I said, well, I don't see it, but hey, good for them.
Yeah, and you know what? It's in fact, if you think about it, he's taken the Kiss model. The main man. I can't remember his name for the minute. He's taken the Kiss model. He's worked on that, but he's done a Gene. I mean, Gene will be kicking himself that he didn't do this. He's got rid of the band. He's just
he did.
Yeah. So it's like basically Gene must be looking at that, going, "Oh man, I've fucked up."
Yeah, but Gene is nothing without Paul, and Paul is nothing without Gene.
Yeah. No, I agree. But yeah, he's perfected the band model. Don't have a band.
Yeah.
Just sack them off and put them in masks as well.
Yeah, and then you can have anybody in the band. You can pay them crap because it's not about them. It's about this guy's character, and it's still. I mean, like I said, I don't want to flag him because, they're successful and the guy is doing what he wants to do and he's successful. That's so good for him and he's got a lot of followers, but it's just not my cup of tea. I like more.
Yeah. I agree, and fair play to him as well for being so open about it. You know what I mean? It's like, he's been quite open and honest about it. Not from day one, but it's not the kind of conversation that's going to come out day one. But it is what it is. Plenty of people seem to like it, but it's not for me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
So were you have you had any festivals cancelled on you this year?
Oh, we've had everything canceled on us this year.
Shit.
We were supposed to play with Napalm Death and Worm Rotten and in Switzerland, first week of March.
Right.
And that's when Corona really started to get bad. So literally, we had our plane tickets, we're ready to go. We're worried about it, but we don't really know the impact that coronavirus obviously will have. It's all still very new to us. So we've got that worry, but basically, the day before we're supposed to fly out, the city of Zurich canceled the show because show was happening in a venue that was owned by the city, and they're like, "Well, we don't want to spread this thing. We're canceling it." So at that point, everything just went downhill. As soon as that fell, all our other shows for the whole year just fell one after another after another. And I mean that's not independent of us. I mean that's everybody and everywhere.
Yeah, well, we've had to cancel our album tour. Well, not cancel, but it's going to take place in 2021. So we've put a first album out for 29 years. Can't fucking tour it.
Doesn't that suck?
I mean, yeah, you're right. You're right to laugh because it is pretty funny, actually. But
well, I'm not laughing at
no, it's fine. It's fine. Honestly, it's genuinely funny.
It's just like, oh my God, we mustered up we're at Psych all of a sudden, and then boom, kicked right in the nuts. That's kind of what it is.
Oh, I'll tell you what. The music business. Well, it's called the music industry now because it ain't a fucking business.
No.
And we've been with the same live agent since we came back. We've been together 5 years. We finally got the album out. Album came on the Friday. On the Monday, live agent rang us and dropped us, having already booked the first half of the album tour, and dropped us. I know, and I was like, "You're fucking joking," But this is where we've been aiming for all these years, and you're like, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" So, but as it is, the tour would have landed in a time that would have been cancelled anyway. So,
Yeah.
It does suck. It does suck. But are you rearranging? Are you rearranging? Are you getting people saying, "Look, we'll go again next year," or how's it shaping up?
There's a lot of that happening, and one of my really good friends is our booking agent. I've known the guy for a million years, and at least our booking agent in America, and he books bigger bands here. Like he manages Anthrax actually, and Overkill he books, and all the big thrash bands here. And I talked to him about what the industry is going to be like, or what the business is going to be like, and he's shaking his head. He's like, I don't know what's going to happen, man, because obviously, if you're a booking agent, you make your money off of live performances, your commission off live performances. There's none. So basically, your business is shut down for a year because they're not expecting anything to come back until at least, February of 2021. So, and that's just an expectation. There's no, things could get worse again. Nobody knows. So your money's gone there. There's no income. Now, we're very fortunate of a band that, when this band was dead in the water to us, we have other jobs and lives and careers and stuff, so we don't really depend on Demolition Hammer for our income at all. But, there's bands that do. A lot of those Florida, death metal bands that just basically, those guys are in dire straits because what are they going to do?
I was talking to
everything is closed. How are they going to live?
Well, I was talking to Terry Butler, literally 3 or 4 days ago, and he was saying they're having to use the time to go, right, fuck it, let's write another album.
Yeah, well, that's another thing that's gonna. You might actually have benefit by having your album kind of out before all of this.
I know what you mean.
And
yeah,
and because Steve, my singer, was over here. Steve was over here at my house last night. We were talking about, what are we going to do, and the negatives and positives of everything. Every band is writing an album, every single one.
Yeah,
because what else can they do?
Yeah.
So, we write an album. We have to get it on a record label. And a record label, my thought would be like, well, we have, bigger bands giving us material. We're putting out a whole bunch of stuff next year. Why would we even care what Demolition Hammer does? And then if we find a record label to do that, then look at our level of competition.
Yeah.
So, it's you think to yourself, well, we can put it out and see what happens. But now we're already up against every other band, and the same thing kind of goes like that with gigs, because it's going to be a sort of buyer's market because there's so many bands who make their living playing music. They want to get money now, so they're going to want to do any gig they could get, and the promoters are going to know that, and they're going to lowball the bands. They're like, that's fine, but then the promoters also have to lowball the bands because they don't know what restrictions are going to be put in place, to go to a show. Their governments or their cities might say, fine, you can have a show, but only 50% of your capacity, which means 50% less money. So, it's a really crazy time.
Well, also we've got a lot. Well, basically, our kind of events are the last things that are going to be allowed to happen. I don't see sporting events being fully attended again until there's a vaccine.
Yeah.
And also, I saw a Ticketmaster survey, and it was an industry survey, and they took a poll of 4,000 of their customers, and it came back that 40% of them wouldn't be attending a show until they had been vaccinated.
Jeez.
So now, obviously, we don't know who those 4,000 people were, but ultimately, there are still, because the other things we've got to contend with, other than that the events are going to be the last thing that's allowed, is some people aren't going to want to go because the virus, and some people aren't going to be able to go because they've been stuck in lockdown, losing shitloads of money.
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing. That's shows and with albums. If you only have X amount of money and 10 of your favorite bands pull out new albums, you're going to go get a Demolition Hammer album? Probably not, So I don't know. Man.
Don't put yourself down, Derek.
It's a weird time, and like I said, I'm knocking on wood here. We're fortunate because this isn't our main source of incomes, but for bands that it is, it's tough, and it's just.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Now, look, Derek, I'm really conscious since you told me at the beginning that you're you're holding up the family day out. So, look, I've got an idea. We've pretty much talked about modern times right now. Why don't we call it and call that part 1? And why don't we pick up next weekend, same time, same place, and do part 2?
That works out nicely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do that. I'll try to do it a little bit earlier because I know. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how yours.
No, that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. You name a time, mate, and we'll do it next Sunday.
What's the latest time you could do it? Because I could do it during the week, it's like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock my time, but that's like midnight your time. I don't know.
Yeah. No, to be honest, man, I've got loads of interviews in the can at the moment, and I'm getting them out quickly. So, same time next week is cool with me.
All right, so we'll do it that time.
Yeah. Well, look, if you want to bring it forward a bit, to free up your day, because I realise 2 o'clock is about, if you want to free it up and do it like midday your time, whatever, that's cool.
All right, Ben. Thanks. I will shoot you a text.
Yeah.
During the week, maybe, we'll definitely show up at time. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you looking out for my family like that. My wife is giving me the stink eye.
No worry. Yeah, I can feel it, bud. I can feel it. All right, man. Okay, go and give him the good news, and we'll speak next week. Have a great day.
All right. You too, man. Thanks.
Cheers, man.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See? I'm not a cunt. Or am I? Let's find out in part 2.
Hey, man. How you doing?
Yeah, good, man. Good. How are you?
I'm okay, man. Sorry for the delay before, man. I'm trying to do a few things at once, and I always get behind when I do that. I guess I'm not capable of it.
I know what's going on here. I showed a sign of weakness to you last week, and you've ridden roughshod all over me.
It's quite the sign of weakness. Hold on a second. I'm doing 2 things at once again, and I can't do it. Hold on. Let me isolate myself from all the craziness around here. Hold on a minute. Okay,
cool. So what have you been up to? Are you all still locked down tight there, or how's it shaping up?
It's loosening up a lot. As a matter of fact, it's probably about maybe about 20% of what it was. It's quite like today we're going, and that's kind of why I was late. The kids have actually a birthday party, which they haven't gone to in months, so I was trying to get the kids ready for that.
Right. Okay. Well, look, you can always be late late because of a kid's party. That's that's the law, isn't it? Really. Oh, lost you.
Honest, I listened to the comedy stuff more because it was cracking me up.
Oh man, look, stop! Do you know what? You broke up then, and and you came back, and the only thing I heard was, I was watching the comedy stuff more. So sorry, but missed what you were saying.
Hold on, let me move a little closer to my router, maybe. I'm cutting up a bit here. I was listening to the comedy stuff more, man. It's hysterical. I think it's pretty funny.
Oh, thank you.
The character's great. It's awesome.
Oh, cheers, man. Thank you very much. That's really cool. It's like I know what you mean though. If you've got a choice of somebody sent you some stuff and you've got a choice of music or something else to listen to, invariably I'll go for the something else as well, because it's I love music and everything, but there's so much of it. It's always interesting to try something else.
Yeah, and especially being, I think, a musician, it's like, okay, when you listen to music as a musician, you like it, but you have a tendency, to sort of dissect it in your head, because that's kind of what you do. But when, I'm not a comedian by any means, except for when I don't mean to be, and that's the worst part. But, when you're listening to comedy, it's something that you just enjoy because it makes you laugh. There's no, trying to dissect it and figure it out and understand what it's just simple, funny. And from my layman audience member type, and so I gravitate to that. And I think you're pretty funny, man. It's pretty good.
Thank you very much, mate. Thank you. That's really good. Funnily enough, this is probably the most I've spoken about stand-up with a guest during the entire 5 years that I've done the podcast. But you're the first person to ever ask to to sort of see a link or something like that, and then actually follow through on it as well. So that's really cool. Thanks, man. It's
no problem. Keep being funny. Hopefully, you get bigger and bigger, and come over here and make people laugh.
Well, unfortunately, given what's going on with the horrendous comedy scene at the moment, it's unreal. It really is.
Oh yeah.
It's
I mean, I guess like I said, it's from my standpoint, I'm not part of it. I'm just your standard everyday audience member. So, I don't really go to a lot of stand-up places, or I know the classics, the big guys, and as a kid, man, I just going to sleep. And when I was like, 7, 8 years old, I used to listen to Bill Cosby records. And this is before the world knew he was kind of rapey. This is just, the funny Bill Cosby. And,
yes, yeah.
And, that used to crack me up. I used to listen to, and then all these comedians that came out, Eddie Murphy, forget it. It was cracking me up. I saw Dave Chappelle when I was, younger. All these guys, Rodney Dangerfield, he used to do this thing on HBO where he'd sort of introduce comics, and I'd always watch it every time. And that's where I saw Sam Kinison and, just all these guys. So from a fan of laughing, I really do like stand-up comedy.
Yes.
And,
yeah. No.
And seeing all the ones that I've watched and then watching you up there, I mean, you're very comfortable. It's not like, it's not like you're trying to find your guy. It's like, I don't know. It cracked me up. Looked like you've been doing it for years and years and years and made me laugh. So kudos to you.
That's really cool, man. Thank you very much. To be honest, it's more a case of, well, you were right there. I mean, I have been doing it a long time, and I am comfortable up there. And that really, really is the key to stand up, is that just feeling completely comfortable and at home up there.
Right.
Because that means that you do actually you're gonna, if you're not comfortable up there, you can't be funny.
Yeah, you can't. And I would think the audience would know it. I mean, I've seen comedy shows where where comedians bomb and then they start to sweat and you're like, oh boy, you just know it. And then they're never comfortable for the rest of the set, even if they do something funny. But like I said, you have that comfortable feeling up there, and it comes across, and I think the audience got it too. So I liked it. It was good.
Oh, that's cool, man. I could talk with you about this for hours, but I better not.
I could talk too, because like I said, I love music. I've talked music my whole life, but comedy and like now the only movies I watch are like comedies and sci-fi. I mean, that's kind of it. There's all my friends like, oh, did you watch The Sopranos? Never saw The Sopranos. I've never seen The Godfather, just because there's nothing funny in it. I mean, there probably is for me, but everyone else will look at me like I'm deranged if I start laughing when this guy gets shot in the eye, So I don't watch that, but I love all that stuff, man. All that British comedy. I remember watching Benny Hill when I was a kid.
Bloody hell, right.
And, there's just so many good things. And then MTV here started playing The Young Ones. And, that introduced, well, of course, there was Monty Python, The Young Ones. I mean, and then just a lot of, like, something I discovered recently, the IT crowd. I mean, I know it's older for you, but, for me, I just discovered it maybe about 2 years ago. And I'm like, that is hysterical. So a lot of good stuff from England. And I just love that British humor.
Oh, that's cool, man. That's really cool. I mean, funnily enough, a lot of my comedy influences, initially were from the States, and I've got to say,
really,
yeah, I'm probably the most single influential comedian that I've seen on my sort of will to do comedy was Robin Williams.
Oh, dude, that guy was amazing.
Yeah,
always on.
Yeah.
He could. I mean, I've heard stories, and I've seen a documentary of him recently. Musicians, you have to improvise sometimes. Sometimes you just, you're up there, you're playing, and you're like, I'm just gonna improvise. And we could do it, I suppose, to an extent. Some are much better than others. But Robin Williams, his ability to improvise, to just turn on in a second was, I think this is what all the other comedians said. It's just nothing like they've ever seen. And he's funny every time, all the time.
Yeah.
And he's so diverse, such a great talent, that he was.
Oh, he was amazing, and the thing is, the reason he got the reason he took his own life was it wasn't just the fact that he'd been diagnosed with Parkinson's and then he got diagnosed with dementia on top of it.
Yeah.
And given who he was, and how he rolled, then you kind of think, well, yeah, sort of, I get it.
Yeah.
As horrible as that is to say, but oh yeah, well, let's.
But you know what? It's from a weird standpoint. My father has Alzheimer's and my mother had dementia before she passed, and it's a terrible, terrible disease, and just Alzheimer's and dementia on its own. But and this is gonna sound weird, but it would have been interesting to see what comes out of Robin Williams' head when he can't control it.
I know what you mean, yeah.
It would have been interesting. Would it have been funny? Would it have been sad? Would it have been, just imagine he's in a hospital and a nurse comes in and he starts giving her, his order for lunch because she looks like a waitress or something. Who knows what would have happened?
Yeah, exactly.
It's wrong and it's macabre thinking, but I don't know.
Well,
that's where my brain goes.
Well, it's what Jay Leno always said about Bill Hicks, that if he'd still been around, Bill as an old man, sort of grouching about the state of comedy and everything else would have been absolutely amazing. But unfortunately, the best ones don't live long, unfortunately. Well, actually,
no.
Robin Williams put in the hours, didn't he?
He has been around forever, and he was in the 60s, right? When he passed, maybe 62, 63.
Yeah, something like that. But well, anyway, look, enough of comedy and me and everyone else.
That's okay. A different podcast. Right?
Yeah, that is a different podcast. Yeah. Well, funnily enough, I did one. I did a podcast with Jimmy DeGrasso, and we got on really well. And I said to him, "Look, do you want to come on and do my movie podcast as well?" And he was like, "Yeah, I love movies." So I was like, "Oh, great." So anyway, I'm just going to have to do it as a 2-part podcast on the main podcast, because we tried to talk about movies, but then we just kept drifting off back onto all the subjects that you sort of that we both sort of just felt like talking about. So just wandered off talking about anything. But anyway, I'm interested. Going back to the old days, it took you guys quite a while to get your first release out, didn't it?
Not really that long. I mean, the band had some history there. I mean, the first performance of the band. I'll go with the history. The band, I think, started in 1986. So it was James and Steve who remained in the band the whole time, and there was another drummer by the name of John Salerno. And they put out that first demo, I think in '86 or '87, and then Salerno, who was not really into this type of music, he kind of left, and then they got Vinny and they got myself in the band, and then by 1989 we put out a demo, and then by 1990 we were signed. So it was relatively quick when I joined the band. Within a year and a half we were recording an album.
Right.
So that was kind of cool. But it was, there was the real early days. We played a lot of shows around here. There used to be a club. I grew up in a place called New Rochelle, which borders the Bronx. And the rest of the guys grew up in the Bronx. And there was this really cool club called Streets, and it's this little hole in the wall. But for whatever reason, every great band played there. When I was in my late teens. So this music, there was always a place to play this type of music, and Creator played there, and just all these underground bands. Sodom, I believe, played there.
That's really cool.
Suicidal Tendencies.
That is really
Pantera.
cool.
As a matter of fact, Pantera. I toured with those guys a little later on in life, but the first time I ever saw Pantera was at this club in Streets called Streets. Opening up for Toxic. You've heard of Toxic.
Yeah,
you know those guys.
Yeah.
They were opening up for Toxic. Nobody knew who the hell they were. And, this was during their power metal tape, days,
Right.
their album. And I saw them play. I was like, holy crap. Just looking at Dime play. I mean, he's they got the strobe light in the middle of the dual strobe lights in the middle of the drums, like Voivod used to do. So I loved that. And just watching Dime play, I was like, holy crap. And then I remember after the show, I went to Vinny, and I said, man, let me buy, because they weren't signed, to a real label. They were signed to whatever label. I think they were putting them out independently at that time. And he's like, here, man, I could, this is the tape here. We don't really sound like this anymore, but this is what we got. So I bought it from him, and I listened to it, and I was like, oh, well, it doesn't sound like what they sound like when I seen them. And then, so I just put it away. But years later, when I got to tour with Pantera and I got to know those guys a little better, I went to Vinny. I'm like, Vinny, I saw you guys play in New Rochelle in immediate streets. I'm like, yeah, man, I bought your tape. And he's like, oh, man, you bought that thing? I'm like, yeah. He's like, where is it now? And I said, Charlie Benante stole it from me. But, I did listen to it.
So Charlie nicked it, did he?
Yeah, he did.
Oh, no. Oh, dear. That's awesome, man. I mean, it's crucial to have those venues as well, isn't it? It's crucial to have that, to be able to see these bands and to know it's kind of like, right, okay, so this is like, I've got a band from Brazil, playing around the corner from me. This, this is real. This can happen.
Yeah, and that's why it's very influential. These little hot spots of where these, at least in the States, I don't know how it worked in Europe so much, but in the States, these hot spots of where death metal and thrash metal and all these underground sites, there was because there was places to play. I mean, San Francisco had, the Stone and the Omni, and those were great places. And New York, I mean, we had L'Amour's, we had L'Amour's East, we had Streets. I mean, there's so many great places. And this kind of helped these early bands play. And, we saw all the bands play. I've seen Biohazard play 1 million times. I saw, all these bands play. And that really, I think, helps the genre, and it helps have these sort of hotbeds of this type of music in these towns like San Francisco and New York, Tampa and Florida. So all those death metal bands played because they had that place to play. And I can't remember the name of the club, but there was a club down there where they all used to play. And, that's where it starts. So it's pretty cool. And that's why, back to your question, the early days for me, when I joined, it was fast, till we got some recognitions because we just played our ass off everywhere and anywhere, all around the tri-state area. We would just play. Every weekend we were playing.
That's cool, man. I mean, what I meant by being a bit late is that sort of 1990 for your first album as a thrash band.
Oh, gotcha. Sorry about that.
No, not at all. I didn't make myself clear, and plus you got to get into the the workings of those sort of 4 years before. But yeah, I mean it's not great timing, is it?
No. Well, no. As far as getting a little bit into the game late, yeah. I mean there was other things involved, other bands involved, but we came in late for sure. But we were, we listened to all the bands that were out, and we liked that kind of music, and those bands that were out is what made us like this type of music. So, we were a product of, I guess, the second generation of this type of music, I guess. So, we were late to the game that way. And I think that hurt us, obviously. I mean, I think any band, if you get out sooner, a couple of years sooner, you have, especially in an emerging type of music that it was at the time, there's less competition in that genre, and so getting into it as late as we did, we had not a lot of popularity. We just kind of were able to do the things that we wanted to do. So I think that hurt us, but we're not bitter over that or anything like that. It's just the way it is.
yeah, no, absolutely, and it's almost, but also. None of it matters now.
Yeah, now none of it matters.
yeah, exactly. It's like you were in one of those. You were in that rare group of bands that was able to get a deal.
Yeah.
So we were both legitimized by record companies. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like, so we.
Well, it was, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. You go on.
Yeah, back then it was really weird. I mean, Europe, I think you guys had more labels around, but in America there was like 2 or 3. You had Road. At the time, it was Road Racer, which became Road Runner. There was Combat, and there was Metal Blade, and that was kind of it. And the Metal Blade guys, they kind of stuck to the ones that guy Brian. I think he kind of knew everybody's the bands that he signed. I think. So we, Century Media, who we signed to. So the story there is we actually had a record deal offer by Road Racer Records, or who would become Road. They offered us a deal, and then Century Media came in, this new label out of Germany, and they said, we want to sign you. And so we had two labels that were interested, and common sense would say, well, go with the bigger label. That would make sense. But we don't have common sense. So what we did is, which actually turned out to be a good deal. So we thought to ourselves, well, Road Racer, they're signing so many bands, and their philosophy was just sign everything, throw it on the wall, and let's see what sticks. And they were just signing all these bands, and not really giving them a lot of support, just trying to see which ones, the music just sort of sold the band. And then you had Century Media, who was like, look, we're a starting label. We've got some money behind us. We'll sign you. We'll put you on the road, which Roadrunners said they wouldn't do. So we're like, well, you know what? Let's just go with the new label. We're going to try to get as much out of this as we can for our own sake, not necessarily to try to be popular, just because we want to tour. We want to have opportunities to do things just because we like doing it, not because we thought we were going to be the Beatles or something like that. So we went with Century Media, and we were actually the second American band they signed. The first American band they signed was Iced Earth, and they only did that like 2 weeks before they signed us. So it was kind of cool, record label wise. And then they followed through on what they said they were going to do. We went on tour with Obituary, later that month or later that year. Greatest time ever. And
yeah, I'm not surprised.
And they pushed it the way that they did, to the best of their ability of pushing the album, and it wasn't wildly successful, but again, like you said, none of that matters now.
Yeah, exactly. It's and it's kind of weird, isn't it? You go away. And so actually, I've run away from another question I wanted to ask. So we were pretty much. We were kind of, I think, our first album was 88. So we were kind of second wave, maybe. I mean, for UK-wide, we were first wave. But, sort of when you think of the old waves, would that have made you... I mean, you'd have been like third or fourth wave with an album out in 90. But then again, I presume you were also, really well-known on the scene because you've been around for years.
Yeah, I mean... I think you're right. I don't know. I couldn't tell you what years the waves were, and I'm sure they were different. Before the internet, in different countries, because everything was an import. They don't have imports now, and everything. So, if you put something out today, I hear it tomorrow. But here in America, it's I mean, we were around from the late '80s, which is right when this type of music started exploding. I mean, Slayer was already big, and the Anthrax and Metallica was already huge. So it was because of those bands that we did what we did, like Exodus and all those bands. So '90s, like you said, it's kind of a little bit late coming to the game. There's not a lot of bands that came after us, within those first couple of years after us, because everything changed after that. But like I said, I think we kind of snuck one under there. We just got under the gate in time to be a little bit, relevant in what we were trying to do.
Yeah, and I presumably, was there any time where you were? I mean, I know you sort of got signed when you were, when you'd only been in the band 18 months. But presumably, when you were coming to the band, you were like, right, how come we're kind of, we haven't got something out? Because you must have been coming to it having seen the band, around, and thinking, well, let's get this moving.
Well, no, there really wasn't much of an around. Like I said, I joined in '88. Their demo came out in '87. So, but they weren't playing a lot of gigs. They were just having these sort of personnel issues. So really, they only played one gig before I joined the band in those 2 years. But the demo was getting a lot of play, so I would hear that on the radio. And, you know, I knew the guys because friends of mine were in a band, and they practiced in a room right next door to James, you know, to Demolition Hammer. So I kind of knew who they were, and I would listen to them all the time practicing. And I was like, wow, they're really good. So, but it's, you know, I was young. You know, I was 18 when I joined. So I was just happy to be playing the type of music that I liked to play. And, you know, that's kind of one cool thing about the band, and still to this day, and it kind of hurts us more than anything else, is we just do it for the fun of doing it. You know, the whole business part, trying to promote ourselves and, you know, making a business out of it, we suck at all that. We just like to play the songs, play live shows, and enjoy it. And everything we do, we kind of do for our own enjoyment. And if people like it, great. If people don't like it, great. I'm sorry. You know, you don't have to go. But, you know, we just do it for ourselves. That's why this sort of rebirth to us is absolutely amazing, because, you know, the people that like us, it's great. I'm glad we get to play in front of them. I will gladly play, you know, anywhere, at any time. But the enjoyment we get is just we're able to do this again. You know, we kind of relive our childhoods, per se. And just we have such a great time. And, you know, that's kind of why we do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's coming back. It's kind of it's almost it's a bit of a shock, isn't it? Really, that it's like, wow, this is yeah. I mean, I'm not sure. Was that? Did you get over to the UK and Europe? I know we had that conversation. We had the chat last week, and I'm trying to remember if you had done Europe or not.
Oh, you mean in the early days?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We played Europe a bunch of times. We toured with Obituary and Morgoth in like '90. We toured with Dark Angel over there. We toured with Massacre and Grave. I think we did a couple other shows over there, like random shows. But yeah, we played England, UK. We played all over UK. Some great. We played Marquis with Cronus. It was funny, you know.
Wow.
He's a funny guy. So back then, I'll tell you that little story. So back then, my drummer was a huge Venom fan. You know, he used to wear this shirt all the time that had a picture of Kronos with his hair parted right down the middle, and he's just got this agonizing look on his face, and underneath it, it just said just nightmare, just scream, you know, across the mouth. So my drummer, he was a pretty funny guy, and he always used to, you know, goof on that shirt. And not a goof, it was more of like, you know, he was just loving that shirt. So he'd take his hair, he'd put his hands on his head, pulling his hair flat down and part in the middle. He'd crouch over and he would just scream real loud, nightmare. It was kind of a joke that he would do all the time. He was a real funny guy.
Yeah.
So when we were playing that show with Cronus at the Marquee in London, we were like, all right. Because at the time, Cronus was a big, huge guy, you know, and we didn't know him and we didn't know what to expect. And so we met him. We went to our drummer, Vinny, and I said, Vinny, look, do not do your nightmare thing to the guy because he might punch you and knock your head right off. So don't do it. You know, just take it easy. Let's feel the guy out a little bit. So Vinny's like, yeah, I won't do it. So we're there, and he walks in, and we say hi, and the first thing Vinny does is turn to the guy, pull his hair down, and go, nightmare! You know, and we're looking at each other like, oh, shit, he's dead. But Cronus laughed. He was like, yeah, that's funny. So.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you had, despite sort of coming to things kind of late in the game, it didn't hold you back that much. You still got to put albums out, tour, and still, you know, and leave a legacy that, of course, you're not aware of at the time. But, you know,
no.
has that surprised you coming back? The actual, you know, the legacy, as it were, as opposed to just like, oh wow, this is great. You know, people are still interested. It's like people have actually kind of studied your music and been right into your band, whilst, you know, you've been off doing other things for 20 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first question, you know, people come, well, you know, when we play shows, you know, these young kids or, you know, whatever, these come up and say, oh, man, your band's great. I mean, I've loved all your music. And first thing I say to them was like, well, where were you 25 years ago, man? We could have had different lives, you know. But it is crazy that's what has happened, and we're blessed for that because none of us ever expected it at all. As a matter of fact, we fought it a little bit. I Steve and James, they're older than I am, and so they've got kids and older kids, and then they just kind of sit to themselves. They're not on the internet. They're not watching all the stuff that I watch. But for me, I'm out there, and I don't hide that I was in Demolition Hammer or nothing. So people would find me and they'd contact me, and over time, it wasn't just like one or two a month. It was like one or two a week to one or two a day. And I was just getting, wow, this is kind of nuts. And I floated this idea to Steve. I'm like, Steve, there's a lot of people that keep contacting me saying that they're into the band. And Steve and I stayed close the whole time. He was like the best man at my wedding, the whole thing. So I was like, we could probably play some shows or do something. And he's like, nah, I don't want to do it. I'm done with that. He had short hair, and he was just like, he was into his own business. And he's like, I just don't want to do it. And then just more and more people started calling, and then we went to a show where a friend's band, a band called Solstice, really great thrash metal band out of Florida. They got back together and they did a show, and they played one of our songs, and the crowd went nuts, And then Steve was like, "Holy crap!" He looked at me on the ride home. He's like, Derek, I thought you were just bullshitting me, about all these people. I go, dude, I told you. And he's like, well, maybe we should check it out. So that's kind of how we started getting back together, But it is nuts that, we're able to do this now, and people care now. And people have cared the whole time.
I think that's...
I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah, no, I do feel the same way. And I think it's amazing that that you had that experience, that it was literally... It was people at other, being at another gig, hearing, an audience react to your band songs. It took that to convince him. You know what I mean? It's like, wow.
Yeah. That's
incredible.
Well, I mean, again, that explains why we're kind of late in the game. We just kind of do things at our own pace. I mean, we don't even have an album out. We've been back together for 4 years. At this point, we should have had 2 albums out if we were, that sort of motivated type of guys. And we'll probably, we'll get an album out at some point, and then that too might be late in the game of having a band trying to come back. But that's what I mean. We just kind of do the things at the pace and the way that we want to do them. And that probably hurts us more than helps us, but that's just the way we do it.
Well, I mean, now more than ever, especially with obviously what we're going through at the moment, we have to be, everybody has to do what's best for them, and that's it.
Right. Yeah.
Really, there's utterly, we're all, every band is in its own unique situation. God knows, what we've got in front of us. So you've just got to kind of, roll with the punches at the moment, I guess, is the phrase that springs to mind. Yeah.
I mean, who knows what the future's going to bring? But I know you were telling me last week, record label is ready to go. You got the album out, and then all of a sudden this shit hits. They drop you, and now you're like, what the hell? So what are you guys going to do? Yeah.
Well, I think you kind of don't want to. Be one of those bands who's releasing a post-lockdown album.
Yeah.
I'm still, kind of determined to tour the album that, was our first for 29 years. It'd be quite nice to actually fucking tour that rather than be working on some new stuff, And that really is that's my main thing is, we want to get some shows played. We want to get to as many countries as possible, and tour this album, because it's been a long time in the making, and it's just it's incredibly frustrating. But what are you going to do? We're all in the same boat. Unfortunately, we've just got to live with it.
Yeah. But you're at a little bit of an advantage because we have enough material, I think, ready to do an album. we just got to get a label to put it out and then actually do it. But, during this lockdown, that's what every band is doing. So the idea here from our standpoint is, and I think I talked to you about this last week, the amount of competition we're going to be up against, when we put out our album, it's going to get, lost pretty much in the new Death Angel album, the new, Sepultura. Everyone's putting out an album. So, we're going to, we're low men on the totem pole here. So I'm sure we'll get lost. The people that like us will buy the album, but we're not going to get any bigger, I wouldn't think. But, you're got the advantage because you've already got your album. It's already there,
True.
You should be spending this time pushing the hell out of it. Even if you're not going to make any money in this genre, putting out albums, especially these days. Everyone just downloads shits for free. So, don't expect it. To me, I would just put it out free everywhere and just get a name for yourself. So at least when they do open up touring, in theory, the fans of your band they'll know it, and you'll go somewhere and people will be excited to see you. You've got that jump on everybody else.
Well, hopefully, I tell you what, I wasn't feeling that good about it, but since you've done this little peppy chat for me, I feel all motivated now. I want to get out there and I want to get out there and touring now. What have you done to me, you bastard?
Yeah.
Dear me. Well, man, look, the sooner you guys get back in the studio and recording, the better. I mean, I still think that you're underestimating how anticipated a new Demolition album would be. Definitely, because no offense to any of the bands you mentioned, but they're all putting out, almost like inverted commas, another album. Whereas, yours, I would imagine there'd be a lot more fanfare about it, given the length of time it is since your last one. So I still, to be honest, I think this whole the pandemic and everything and the glut of stuff coming out, I'm now doing for you what you did to me. Okay, I'm now doing your rousing speech. So Therefore, I think you guys can go, well, look, this album wasn't written in lockdown. This album's been 20 years in the making.
You got to do this rousing speech like Winston Churchill. Otherwise, I'm not doing anything.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you will write those riffs. You will put the album together. You will play main stage European festivals. Oh man! Well, look, Derek, it's been an absolute pleasure over the last couple of weekends to have a chat. I really hope we get you get your asses over here at some point and get that album out. But more importantly, all stay safe. That's the main thing.
Yeah, you too, man. And thanks for having me on the podcast. I appreciate it.
No, it's
thanks
been a
for
pleasure,
caring
man.
about my crazy little band here. I appreciate that as well. And it was good seeing you up in Scotland. And, next time we see, hopefully I won't be as drunk as that was bad.
Oh man, I tell you what, it was great. It was great meeting you. And it's not often that you when men of our age, it's not often that you meet somebody for the first time and you're kind of pretty much lit already and on your way to being on fire, let's face it. And it was one of those things. It really was. It kind of took me back, because I was like, it just, meeting lots of fun people backstage, pissed up. It was like, yeah, wow, it's quite a while since I've done this.
Yeah, and that was, that's kind of one of the cool things about doing this is, I back in the day I never really drank or anything or did any of that stuff. So now for some reason I drink all the time, which is terrible. So when I go on these play these gigs once in a while, I might have too much, which I have to stop doing because I'll be dead if I keep doing that. But that was one of those notorious nights where I had a little too much.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's for someone who's never experienced it, it's very difficult because it's like you come off stage, there is a shitload of adrenaline in your system, and what you should be doing is sitting down in the corner and just chilling out, let the adrenaline calm down, your heart rate go down and just let everything. But no, what you want is a beer. You've got people coming up to you saying, "How's it going? No, that was brilliant. That was great." You got and all of it, and it's like you've got lots of people wanting this, wanting that, and you don't get a chance to have that breath to calm down, and then someone sticks a beer in your hand and blah, blah, and before you know it, if you're not careful, you can end up in the state that we ended up in Glasgow.
Yeah. That's pretty much what happened. For us, when we don't tour, we just play these these one-off shows, and we always we fly in. If we play on a Saturday, we'll fly in on Thursday, or actually Friday morning. By the time we get to Europe. And then then we just kind of hang out a day, and then we play the show, and then we go home the next day. So my time clock is all screwed up, and just in general, for those 48 hours that we're there, and then we get on a plane, and then sometimes I eat, sometimes I forget to eat. And that was one of those things where that all days were everything lined up poorly for me, and I just had I didn't even drink that much. I had 3 or 4 little drinks, and then forget it. It just boom, and I was a mess. Well, I should say that. I'm sure I had more than 3 or 4 drinks, but to get to the point where I was crazy, I had 3 or 4 drinks, and then anything after that was just a mess.
Well, at least you had the excuse of having done a gig. I don't know what my excuse was. So anyway, look, Derek, it's been an absolute pleasure. Look after yourself, man, and look, I'll see you somewhere out there on the road.
Definitely. Oh, one more thing I forgot. Yeah. When I mentioned the bands that we toured with. We toured with Dark Angel and Reanimator, our buddies in Reanimator, and those
Bloody
guys were,
hell, of course,
were really cool. I can't believe I did not mention them, and I apologize to them if they hear this, because those guys were awesome.
No, Derek, they will, and I'd forgotten as well, because of course John came up, wasn't he? John was there.
Yeah, John was there. Again, we were very drunk. We only remember bits and pieces, but John was there.
That was amazing. Oh, fuck me, yeah. So which tour was that you were? Was it? So it was you, Reanimator. Who else was on it?
So it was Dark Angel, Reanimator, and us. And it was supposed to be Mordred, but they dropped off at literally at the last minute. I think it was maybe 2 weeks before the tour, and so we got on it. And so it was Reanimator, us, and Dark Angel. And it wasn't a very long tour. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks. But it was good times. I mean, those guys were really cool. We would, we watched them every night. And I think at the end of the tour, we all got up on stage and played some songs with Dark Angel. So everybody got along really well. In those early days, all those tours, all those bands that we toured with, everybody was cool, and we tried to maintain as much of those relationships as we could. But it was great to see John, and I didn't know he was coming. He walked up to me, and I'm like, "Holy crap! Look at you!" And he doesn't even look that much older. I don't get it, but still, it was great to see him.
Oh man, well look, I mean, long story short, and I don't know if you know this, but basically we got Reanimator signed.
Oh really?
Yeah. They supported us. We thought they were great. We gave their demo tape to Music for Nations. Music for Nations signed them. But guess what? On that same gig, right? There was an opening band, then Reanimator, then us. And as I said, we got Reanimator signed. Guess whose first ever gig it was? Third on the bill, opening. Paradise Lost.
Oh my goodness!
I know. And the thing is, Nick knows because I tell the story. They were fucking shit. They were terrible. They played for half an hour. They played one song twice, and just ended up giving up in the end. But clearly went on to sell more records than us and Reanimator put together.
That's the way it works, man. There's video. My first gig with Demolition Hammer was a show in Mexico City. I joined the band 2 weeks before, and it was in Mexico City.
That's brutal.
They're flying us in. We just have a demo out. We only know 5 songs. But they're like, oh, you play 2 nights and, an hour set. We're like, but we know 5 songs. So it's very unfortunate because it's out there now that the people that brought us down are doing some sort of, 30th anniversary thing. So they put out, you'll see it online. It's embarrassing as all hell. I got a big giant afro. It's real bad. And we suck. like tremendously. So we even did like a Metallica cover, and we were so bad, and the sound quality was crap. The instruments were crap, and I think that hid the fact more that we sucked really bad. And so we played that show, and we're like, oh my God, we're terrible. But we kind of over time we got better, and we're able to write some songs, and it worked out. But that's an example of it. Your first gigs or two, they're probably always going to suck.
Yeah.
But,
absolutely,
man. Not to get discouraged.
Well, well, our first ever gig, we had a guest appearance by a 9-foot cardboard cutout of Michael Jackson.
Oh, you still felt a little creeped out next to it, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I nicked it from work. I worked in Music for Nations, and I worked in a fucking music shop. And, and the LP Bad came out. And we had these huge cardboard cutouts of him, and I was like, we're going to be doing our first ever gig. Do you mind if I, take one down as a guest star? And they were like, no, go for it. And I've been doing stupid shit like that ever since. Oh man. Well, look, you take care. Let's
you too, man.
Honestly, let's catch up soon. And how much? Let me just ask, how much of a movie buff are you?
I am a pretty, I wasn't a very popular kid, so I stayed home and watched a lot of movies.
So
I'm pretty good at those old 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s movies.
Cool, man. So would you
like I said, comedies and sci-fi. I mean, that's my thing. So, the Caddyshacs, the Blazing Saddles, all those old comedy.
So would you be?
I'll talk about those for hours.
Would you be cool? Oh, right. So you'd be cool for coming on the movie podcast then?
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much, mate. I will be in touch.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
No worries. Take care, man. Have a good day.
You too.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
That could have gone on forever. What a top man. That's right, Howard. What a wise observation that was. I completely agree. You're not a cunt. So there you go. The latest on Demolition Hammer. Derek is, like I said, having met him in person and got a bit piddly with him, as you can tell. Then it was really cool to have a proper chat with him. And as you heard, may even end up on Movie Bollocks as well. Which, by the way, I hope you're all enjoying. And I'm aware that some of you won't actually give a shit. That's absolutely fine. And some of you are enjoying it, I know. So give us a feedback as long as you if you are, let me know what you think. It would be really good to know. So, I am battering out the podcasts. This is your third podcast this month. Yeah, exactly. Third. You had a movie podcast and you've had 2 music podcasts. And I'm going to keep the content coming. But I need you to share the love. Spread the word. I really do. I really, really fucking do. I think I am also going to be moving host soon. I'll still be on All About the Rock, who are great, and this wouldn't have happened without them. I wouldn't be doing the podcast if it wasn't for them. But it may be time to move and pop off somewhere else, because I need to get the podcast bigger. I need to increase the reach. I need to speak to as many people out there as possible, because there's so many podcasts out there. But I really think that what we've got going here is pretty fucking cool. It really is, because you guys are really supportive. Those people that like Talking Bollocks don't just fucking like it; they advocate for it. They are, you are top fucking people. Please, if we had more, if I could keep the percentage of people who are manic about the podcast who listen to it, that would be awesome. Because extrapolated, Jesus, I think I'd probably just be able to do this as a living. That's not what I'm after, okay? That's what I'm after. This is not a begging bowl moment. But if you can support me on Patreon, patreon.com/Howard H. Smith, please do. You will, you're not just supporting me, you will get a shitload of awesome content. Don't worry about that. But before we go, let's just remember that Black Sabbath are now selling Black Lives Matter t-shirts. I really hope that they are giving a percentage, if not all the money, to worthwhile causes, because I just think, well, they must be. No way a Sabbath going to put out an album out. Sorry, a T-shirt out, and keep the money to themselves. Now, actually, I've just looked up the story. Black Lives Matter instead of Black Sabbath in that logo. Let's have a look. The shirts are available for pre-order, $25 at this location. Blah 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 blah. Black Lives Matter movement was launched. The movement is going right there. Here we go. 100% of net proceeds will be donated to Black Lives Matter. There you go. So I should have probably remembered that and kept a note on it, shouldn't I? Instead of boring you all with this bit at the end of the podcast. But there you go. The other thing I did want to mention, though, aside from that, was it's good old Asking Alexandria, by the way, not Andra. Asking Alexandria. By the way, Asking Alexandria are originally from Ripon in the UK, in Yorkshire, not far from where I'm from. In fact, on the CB, it used to be called Sleepy Valley. This is also where Richard Hammond of Top Gear fame is from. So anyway, Asking Alexandria's Ben Bruce, how is this for a rock and roll anecdote? Hey, I can't compete with this. Ben Bruce. I almost met Gary Moore the night the legendary guitarist died. So there you go. For a long list of who Ben Bruce almost met, I'm sure he'll be releasing a book out soon called Friends with No Fucker. Fuck. What a fuck. Anyway, thanks for your support. Loving it. Stay safe. Thanks to the key workers. Lockdown is easing wherever you are. It does seem to be easing, but still stay safe, people, because gigs seem to be a very, very long way off yet, certainly in the UK. So take care. Please support the podcast all you can. Thanks for listening, and I'll chat to you in probably no more than a couple of weeks.